Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to yet another election prediction video. It is now exactly 1 week out from election day. So on this map, I have already filled out the safe states for each candidate. The states that are filled out, I believe, are going to be won by at least 10 percentage points or more by their respective candidate, which leaves us with a handful of swing states. So I'm basically going to go through and fill these states out from least competitive to most competitive. But first, we are going to look at the RCP aggregate and see how it has changed since last video. And most notably, Donald Trump now leads the national popular vote against Kamala Harris by 0.4 percentage points, which is huge. If Donald Trump wins the popular vote in this election, he wins the election. There is no disputing that. If he wins the popular vote, that almost guarantees he's going to win enough swing states to get to at least 270 electoral votes. For Harris, that's not the case. Harris could win the popular vote by upwards of 4 percentage points and still lose the Electoral College. So here we see RCP's polling map of each state and where they stand currently based off their polling averages. So what we can see here is essentially Donald Trump leads in every swing state, barring Michigan. And Michigan actually just swapped to Kamala Harris. She just flipped it in the aggregate today, with the Susquehanna poll coming out having Harris up by 5. I think that poll, if you look at if you look at even the sample size, it's only 400. It's a very, very small sample size. And obviously, Kamala Harris, if she does win the state of the state of Michigan, she's not going to win the state of Michigan by 5 points. And then you had an Emerson poll come out right after it that has Trump up +1. We'll see where the aggregate stands next week. No matter what, Michigan's going to be very close. But we will get to where I would categorize Michigan as of right now later on in the video. So the other thing I'd like to point out before we get into the actual prediction is the betting odds. On the website Polymarket, Donald Trump currently has a 67% chance of winning the election. And in the popular vote, he has a 42% chance. This is this is essentially a reverse of 2020, where Joe Biden in a majority of the betting markets had about a 65 to 70% chance of winning the election. And if you look at the actual results, Joe Biden won with 306 electoral votes. While betting odds aren't a direct translation of polling data, they are a good indicator of who has the momentum. And in this case, it definitely overwhelmingly shows that Donald Trump does have the momentum over Kamala Harris. But what is more interesting is Polymarket also bets on each individual state and their likelihood to go to either candidate. So if you look at Polymarket's map of the swing states, you'll see Pennsylvania, a 62% chance to go to Trump, Wisconsin, a 59% chance to go to Trump, Michigan, a 53% chance, and he has basically the entire Sun Belt locked down. Georgia at 73%, Arizona at 74%, even Nevada, and this is mostly because of the early vote data, 67% chance for Nevada to go to Donald Trump. That's insane. At this state of the race, I mean, it really does seem like the walls are closing around Kamala Harris. I mean, her pathway to victory relies on taking all 3 of the Rust Belt states essentially at this point, and her best bet at this point is Michigan, and even at that, it's not looking great. So, I mean, while betting odds aren't definitive, I mean, they are pretty good indicators, and with that being said, we will get to the actual prediction. So, as I said before, we are going to start with the least competitive states. And on this map, I believe that would be the state of New Mexico. Now, New Mexico, polling-wise, Harris is up by, I think, like 6 points or so. I mean, we can assume that's a reasonable assertion. I'll give it to her in the likely category. I think because of Donald Trump's improvement with Hispanics, it could very well be in the lean category. But as of right now, we'll keep it likely. So moving on to the state of Virginia. Virginia is another state where I could see it being a lean state. I mean, honestly, polls haven't been that favorable to Harris, considering Biden won the state by 12 points in 2020. I mean, it really might come down to the wire in the state. That being said, I mean, Harris is most likely still going to hold on to it. If you asked me maybe a week ago, I'd say Trump has a better chance in the state. But as of right now, I'm going to put Virginia in the lean category. And then we're going to move on to the state of New Hampshire. And New Hampshire is a state that Trump has been pretty bullish on and his campaign. I think New Hampshire has a good chance to flip red. The only reason I'm skeptical is because polling data isn't that great coming out of the state. And of course, you know, as we've seen before, polls can underestimate Trump, and they most likely will in a number of swing states. It's just I don't know if New Hampshire will be one of them. I think for sure in the Rust Belt, states like Wisconsin and Michigan are going to be Trump underestimations by a few points at least. But other than that, I mean, historically, we haven't seen that big of a polling error in the state of New Hampshire. So New Hampshire is going to be another lean Democrat state. Moving on to the Sun Belt states before we get to the Rust Belt. Actually, no, we'll fill out Maine first. So Maine at large is going to be a likely win for Kamala Harris. And I did forget to fill out Maine's first congressional district as safe for Kamala Harris. But moving on to the state of Minnesota, Minnesota is a state that Hillary Clinton only won by 2 points in 2016. Kamala Harris does have Tim Walz as her running mate, and while that might help her a little bit, I think otherwise, honestly, the state very well could go red, and it might go red. I think it's, besides the 7 conventional swing states, I think Minnesota, if Trump really wants to expand the electoral map, Minnesota is probably his next best bet after winning the, the big 7. That being said, I do think Kamala Harris is going to perform similarly to Hillary Clinton in 2016. I think she picks off Minnesota by a point or 2. And that leaves us with, as I said, the big 7. So going down to the Sun Belt, the state of Georgia is another state where I think Kamala Harris is going to greatly underperform, especially compared to 2020. Georgia is a state that Trump's probably going to win in the lean margin, and that's because, I mean, if you look at, and this goes for most of the Sun Belt states, Kamala Harris has really given up her campaign resources. She's not pouring resources into the Sun Belt at all. She knows that her path to victory relies on her winning the 3 Rust Belt states in the north. And I mean, polling data shows it. Georgia, Trump is leading by the most, I believe, in the state of Georgia out of the 7 battleground states. And so it is his best bet. And in terms of states from 2020 to flip back to red, that is his best bet in 2024. Same thing to be said for the state of Arizona. Arizona, Trump has a good point and a half lead. We'll see if he is able to flip back Maricopa County. If he does, the state is guaranteed to go to him. I mean, I think at this point the state already is guaranteed to go to him. It's just a matter of by how much he wins it by. And then for the state of Nevada, I mean, early voting data is just blowing away the Democrats in the state of Nevada. I mean, it's not even close. Trump's whole promise of no taxes on tips is going to help him in Clark County. He might win Clark County. The city of Las Vegas is in Clark County. He might win that county this time around. Who knows? We'll see. If he does, the state's a lock for him. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's the only county in the state of Nevada that goes blue usually, unless the county that Reno is in also goes blue. I'm not totally sure. But I'm going to put Nevada in the tilt column. I do think Trump's going to win it, but I think it's going to be by less than a point. I think it's going to be pretty close, all things considered. And the final Sun Belt state would be North Carolina. A lot of people are concerned on the right about North Carolina because of the polling data. But Joe Biden at this time of year in 2020 was supposed to win North Carolina by over a point. He ended up losing by 1.5 to Donald Trump. And, Trump has half a point lead in North Carolina. Assuming polls underestimate him by a similar margin in 2020, he is going to win the state by even more than he won in 2020. I think Trump's going to win it by about 2 points. I mean, if it really is this election cycle's Georgia, as in it is a lot closer than the polls were projecting, and I believe Georgia was actually supposed to go to Donald Trump, according to polls in 2020, but Biden somehow managed to pick it off. North Carolina could be closer. It could be tilt. I am going to leave it in the lean column. So that, I mean, already looking at the electoral map, Trump is 2 electoral votes shy of winning the election, and there are 3 states left, the 3 Rust Belt states. Trump only needs one of these states to win. Kamala Harris needs to hold on to all 3. So going from left to right, the most right-leaning state in the Rust Belt would be Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's a state where I think Wisconsin had the worst polling error out of all the states in 2020, and I believe it was up there in 2016 as well. Joe Biden led in the polls by 7 points in 2020 in Wisconsin. He ended up winning it by less than a point, I believe. During this cycle, I mean, God knows how much they underestimate Republicans, but Trump is leading in the RCP aggregate by 0.5%. So Trump's already leading in the polls in Wisconsin, and historically they underestimate him. I mean, you know, what other direction can it go? So for that matter, I'm going to put Wisconsin in the lean red category. I think he wins it by a point or 2. So already we see Donald Trump is past the finish line at 278, and that leaves 2 states left. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the state of Michigan did recently, today, swap back to Kamala Harris in the RCP aggregate. That being said, Michigan's another state where there has been a historical polling error, both in 2016 and 2020. Kamala Harris only leads the state by 0.3 percentage points, and it's all because of one poll from that Susquehanna poll. So barring that poll, Michigan would still be in Trump's column, and I do expect Michigan to still go to Trump. I just think it is going to be by a smaller margin than Wisconsin. Usually Michigan does vote to the left of Wisconsin by about a point or so. So not a significant difference. But if Wisconsin's going to Trump by 2.5 points or so, then I do think Michigan's going to barely go to Trump, but maybe by less than a point or so. So I'm going to put it in the tilt column. And that leaves us with one more state, the state of Pennsylvania, the state where Donald Trump was shot in the ear. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Trump's going to win the state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, he's leading in the polls. Polls have actually been quite accurate in the state of Pennsylvania. I believe it was spot on in 2020. Joe Biden was supposed to win the state by, I believe, 1.2 percentage points, and he did end up winning the state by 1.2 percentage points. They have Trump up by less than a point right now. I think that's going to stick, and I do think he's going to pull a victory out of Pennsylvania. And so with that, I am sticking to the 312 to 226 electoral vote margin. There's a lot of YouTubers out there, channels that make election content, who predict that Trump's going to expand the electoral map. He's going to take New Mexico. He's going to take Minnesota. He's going to take Virginia, New Hampshire. I'm not saying that's impossible. I admire the optimism. I think it's more practical. The country is just too polarized right now, and for there to truly be a landslide for either candidate, something would have to go cataclysmically wrong for the other campaign, and we're only a week away from Election Day. We've had our October surprises, quote unquote. Some of them have been pretty pathetic, if you ask me. But at this point, I might do another. I'm probably going to do one more prediction next week, the night before Election Day, just if there is any monumental change in the data. But as of right now, this is pretty much where I see the election standing. Things can still change, but I don't think they're going to change that much between now and next week. So if you guys enjoyed my video, leave a like, comment, and I'll see you guys in the next one.